Welcome to our Composable Banking Vodcast by Sili Solutions. In this vodcast, we're exploring what it takes to build future-proof financial services. In today's episode, we're joined by Mikko Ayub and Erik Åkesson from BearingPoint to discuss legacy, what it actually is, where it shows up, and why it matters now more than ever. Drawing on insights from their recent white paper, we'll look at how banks can identify their optimal rate of change, separate transformation from day-to-day operations, and take practical steps to turn legacy from a constraint into a catalyst of growth. Let's get started. Want to transform banking? Look outside of banking. Let's talk about legacy management and lessons from other industries. What are some clear examples of how legacy has slowed transformation in financial services?
If we compare financial services with airlines, we can find a lot of commonalities, like in the previous episode where we stated that there is a very high risk culture or sort of risk avoidance culture in both industries. In the financial industry, you have risk compliance and credit organization to make sure that the bank runs safely and is sort of solid over an extended period of time. In airlines, you have safety culture so that the flight operations can be operated in a very safe manner. And I think we all as consumers, we want that and we like that when we sit on the aeroplane. We do not want to hear the captain saying, good morning, welcome on board. My co-pilot and I thought we'll completely do this out of the box today. We are innovative and we'll try something new and let's see how this goes. No, you want them to do the checklists and go like they have done hundreds and hundreds of times before. But this has a spillover into other parts of the organization where you would like to see a fail-fast culture. In airlines, that could be, for example, marketing or recruitments or business operations or whatever. In banking, equally, marketing, recruitments, new markets, new products. So there is something to learn between these industries, how they have managed to run or how they have learned to run these two very different legacies in the same organization or in the same operation.
Yeah, so because the sales of airline tickets have been digital for a very long time, they have superior access of data. And because flying is about filling that cabin to the max every time and have no empty seats, the aviation industry is sort of superior and other industries can learn from that. They have built a positive legacy around managing their capacity with data. Other people can learn from that. The other thing that they do is that airlines are special in the case that there's a value chain of aviation and the airlines are stuck in between and squeezed in between oligopolies, sometimes even monopolies. They have to buy aircraft from one of two or maybe 3, 4 top suppliers of aircraft. Aircraft engines are even fewer, maybe only 2. And then they have, on the other side, you have the supply of labor. They are heavily regulated or they are very unionized. So they are essentially a very squeezed part of a value chain. And historically, they have not been able to sort of have these dialogues in a very educated way, but with data, the emergence of data, whenever the labor union states something, and there are also some people internally that hold sort of elevated positions, and they say, well, it is like this because we all know, and I've been here the longest, so you should listen to me. And then you can put data in front of these people and say, well, look, it's not true. This is how it is. So you can challenge these sort of loud people that are historically being able to get their way through the wrong ways. You can challenge them with data.
Airlines indeed are particularly good in using data, and I think this was partly brought via discount airliners who really had their pricing models and capacity optimization. If we look at data in the financial industry, the financial industry at the same time is really good and very much on a learning journey in using data. If we think of the very core, how often have you, for example, received a bank statement that has been incorrect, that there is too much money on your account? It doesn't really happen, hardly ever. Then on the other hand, if we look of the other avenues of data usage, for example, for cross-sale, customer selection, even risk profiling, the financial industry is still very much on a learning journey. It has improved and it has advanced, but there is still a lot it can achieve in doing that. And learning, for example, from the airlines and their legacy on this could be a sort of cross-fertilization between these two industries that might yield.
What can banks learn from other industries?
Yeah, I think Mikko and I had already had some examples what we can learn from aviation. When it comes to military, it's quite interesting, but military has similar problems, but they solve them in very different ways. So if you look at at least any Western army, or possibly even all armies in this regard, they will have a legacy portfolio of sort of guns and ammo or equipment, ships, artillery pieces, war planes, and everything else. And if war comes today, you're going to fight back with your current legacy portfolio of guns and ammo and cannons. And there is nothing else. You cannot dream about some futuristic drones that might come. You have to fight with what you have today. So what the military does, and that is also true for any company, you can only sell the products you're able to produce. Now what the military does that is a little bit different in the sense is that they divide quite clearly between legacy consumption or usage and legacy development. They take sort of 98% of the soldiers or so, at least in the case of the Western armies, and they send them to practice on how to use the current portfolio of guns and ammo. And they say, educate yourselves on how to defend as best as you can with the current equipment. Then they take about 2% of the soldiers and the more senior top brass and the promising strategic thinkers, and they send them into a think tank, called headquarters. And so they go to the capital city often, and then they mingle with the politicians and the people in government that work with strategic planning. And then they essentially focus on strategic purchasing of the next generation equipment. And because of military systems are often very long dated. For example, a jet aircraft is like an extreme example, but it's a 40-50 year cycle before from when you decide you need a new aircraft, you decide which one to get, they start flying and they fly and you change them and upgrade them and then they are decommissioned at some point. There's like a 50-year cycle from the beginning to end of that. So you lock yourselves into very long-dated strategic choices that will define a lot of other things. So there's a very heavy focus on getting this right. So they have 2% or so of the most brilliant people focusing on that. No military planner is a theory-only person that has never been in the field. They are all selected from the army, from the frontline people, where they come from working with the current legacy. So all of the sort of the majors that are at their first stint in the head office, they have spent the last 10 years or so working with the legacy. They deeply understand what it means. Then they sent back to the front line. And then they rotated back in the headquarters 5 or 10 years later. So they have this rotation of their strategic thinkers that we believe that we don't really see a parallel in the corporates.
No, we talk about it a lot in corporates, about rotating and circulating people in different operations and organizations, maybe also geographically. But if you take the number of talk and the number of reality in making it happen, there is a mismatch. And now if we think of the military business, let's call it a business for the lack of a better word here, they are not able to recruit from a competitor. While corporates can always think that okay, if we miss a competence, we can go to a competitor and recruit it. In most industries, this is feasible and possible. Now imagine if there were a corporate who can really not go and recruit from a competitor, how would their talent development and HR development differ from what it is today? Of course, we have corporates who do it really well today, but again, the big bulk of corporates, I feel, could improve. If they were not able to recruit from a competitor, they would probably run their talent development and talent management programs differently. And that is a legacy from the military that the corporate world could really learn upon. And I think to the corporate world, this is a legacy or a feature from the military to be learned. Now, if you think of the military operation, what the command center needs to succeed in is to have all the brigades, all the platoons, all the battalions, all the Navy, Air Force, artillery, whatever, to sort of operate in a very obedient manner together towards a common goal. Maybe there could be something to be learned from the military legacy in the sense that to really make a difference to your competitor and to the market in general is how well you can advance the totality of the operation and the equipment that you have in the organization, rather than having quick wins here and there and going after the press releases and LinkedIn posts in how some specific area has advanced and created something new. That doesn't elevate the totality. It's a nice news and a nice buzz, but to really make a sustainable difference, you need to get the whole mass of the operation, the organization to work.
Those are brilliant learnings from other industries. What, if we think about avoidance, what should banks avoid copying from other industries?
When we have looked into legacy, we have put some focus also on how does legacy develop over time. And maybe surprisingly, even relatively new companies, say 10 years old, fast growing, what we would call modern, which have originated from a startup, they have also built legacy, and that to some degree has become a problem. That's typically technological legacy and legacy of not having processes in place. And I think for those companies then to make it or break it, to get to the next level is how to stop creating legacy. And this for the financial industry is something maybe to look into successful industries to understand how to stop creating legacy, because it really is kind of pointless if you are fixing legacy here and creating legacy on the other end of this span. That's not sustainable.
Should we look at I think the other sectors that we have looked at is healthcare, and then we have looked also at the personal psychological legacy. And if we would to put a few words on that, healthcare is quite interesting in the sense that the word itself is actually a little bit misleading, because healthcare is sick care. So there is sort of a big thinking error that they are trying to work with now, in the sense that what the healthcare buck is spent on building big factories for people that are ill, to cure them, and then you call them hospitals. And in these hospitals, you wait for people to get ill, you take them in, you cure them, and then there is a big rehabilitation period, and you send them back to pay taxes. It will be far better for society as a whole over time to spend a bit less money on hospital and instead spending that money on making people not ill in the future. So promote healthy living, not drinking, running more, and not being obese. That way you would sort of buy far more health for your population for the tax money. The problem is that it's a very hard sell for any politician to say, hey, I'll spend a lot less on healthcare now, but in 10 years time or so, or even for sort of heart diseases and things, it's in a 40-year thing. When people that are young now are healthier, they won't have heart attacks in 50 years. So please vote for me, because there will be fewer hospital spaces now. That's not really a vote winner. So it's really hard for healthcare to sort of overcome this. If we look at the personal legacy, I think, first of all, it's interesting, but also you can extrapolate and say that all of us at work, we are just there as individuals. We carry the personal legacy with us to work. We don't sort of leave it at home. Also, similarly to how people have their personal psychological legacies, some corporates will. Something happened back in the day that scared them a lot, so they don't dare to take that kind of risk now. So you need to establish why you are afraid of the things you are. and sort of be critical towards that if that is a relevant fear to have.
So the same applies to organizations?
Yes, definitely.
That applies to you in a personal level as well?
Yes, and I think that is something that we recommend. We are often asked then, what is the relevance of this? Well, if you look at it, a lot of money, and we have talked about it in the previous episodes, but a lot of time and effort is put into defining a future target state. Essentially, this is where we want to go. And then a lot of money is also spent on strategy. Essentially, this is how to get there. But then assumptions are made about the starting point. What if we aren't here? What if we are over here? Well, that strategy then is going to take you there. Also, even if you are where you think you are, but for different reasons than you thought you are, you might choose wrong methods to get to there. So personally and for corporates, it makes some sense to assess, why am I the way I am? Or why are we the way we are as a corporate? Because you will do better change journeys.
Corporates or legacy in corporates is because of human beings. It's because of what the people are, and organizations are a collective of human beings. Corporate legacy, even technological legacy, didn't come from outer space. Technological legacy was created because human beings made certain choices. We took system A instead of system B, we integrated instead of disintegrated, and so on. And then the personal legacies of I am a risk taker or I am a risk avoider or whatever reflect and end up into technological legacy. So understanding this aspect is extremely important, and that is not going to disappear, not even in the future, as long as people are present in organizations.
Could you give one surprising example or a good example of good legacy management and what actually made it work?
Well, if we look at the financial industry, there have been financial institutions who have transformed their technology and hence have managed their legacy into something away from what it used to be. And it might have been more expensive and it might have taken longer time than planned, but it has been completed. And to your question, what made it successful? I think the long-termness and the determinedness into the end situation made it happen. Because what happens in these legacy transformation programs, and we'll come to this in a coming episode, is that they take time. And when something takes long time, particularly in today's world, we tend to lose focus and attention. So it is this long-termness that has played a role in the successful legacy transformations that have taken place.
One other element that I think is relevant here is the ability to greenfield, so to start over. So what I have seen in some cases is both failures and successes of the same, that somebody wants a new system and that system is expensive and some of the data in the old system is needed, and then somebody decides to save some money by creating a link to the old system rather than migrating the data. When you do that, you essentially make sure you need that old system forever. So one thing that I have seen that has worked is to be quite explicit about killing the old systems when you get new ones. So that you need to plan quite early for that. So the new system is about to come. It will require data from system ABC that are old. Make sure that you have a plan to migrate everything, and so that you don't need the old system. Start to plan very early for decommissioning of the old ones. Otherwise, you are left with multiple systems. That is something I have seen go wrong many times, and a few times I have seen it. But it's, when it goes right, it is because of deliberate planning, because there will always be some quick wins by keeping it in the short term.
So getting rid of legacy is important, but you need to be smart with it.
Yes, and you need to plan for it. It won't happen by itself.
Exactly.
There will, maybe this is not a scientifically backed statement, but there will always be the odd moment where there is a short-term win of keeping it. And then you need to have a vision of getting it out, because only then can you get rid of it.
Yeah, play long-term over short-term. That it would be my advice to legacy management.
Precisely. Can we learn from fintechs or tech-native entrants in managing legacy better?
Well, I think that comes to what Erik said here about greenfielding. So fintechs and tech natives typically start from zero. And hence they are able to literally have a clear table and nothing on the whiteboard. And if they do smart, they will also think of avoiding legacy. The problem, of course, or the challenge for growing companies and fintechs is that they don't have, they are living, on a quite, they are on their runway, and that is of a certain length, that runway. So you are not really able to do a lot of things that are not in the very focal part of the business. But the advice to them would be to understand the point where you start needing legacy planning and governance. But for them, or for the industry to learn from them, is this greenfielding and thinking just on a clean whiteboard.
Legacy isn't a tech problem. It's a human one, just wearing a suit.